9 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order, and the first item of business is adoption of the agenda. Moved by McDonald, seconded by Mitchell, that the agenda be adopted as printed and circulated. Are there any issues with the agenda? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Minutes, moved by Mitchell, seconded by McDonald, that the minutes from the September 21st, 2022 council meeting be adopted as amended. Are any other issues with those minutes other than the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So just two timed items today. Minor variance right off the top, and then a delegation at 9:30. Other than that, a fairly short agenda. We'll take a break in the middle for some coffee and muffins and a chat before finishing it off. I'm thinking maybe after the delegation-ish or something like that, but we'll play it by ear as we go if you're all good with that. Yeah? Okay. No public comments submitted for the public comment period, so we'll go straight on to the minor variance under planning. So we have moved by McDonald, seconded by Mitchell, that the council meeting be adjourned at 9:01 a.m. for the purposes of holding a public meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act, and that council move into the Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of hearing a minor variance application. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So for the applicant and anybody watching this on YouTube now or later, it's the same 5 people sitting here, but now not as council, now as Committee of Adjustment to hear a minor variance. And Spencer, I will turn it over to you to tell the committee about the minor variance application.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning to council, staff, and members of the public who might be joining us here today. The application before you is A17-22, and it's an application which seeks relief from Section 11.2 of the zoning bylaw. Essentially, what the applicant is looking to do is facilitate a garage addition to their existing residence on Selden Street in Thamesford, and they're looking to extend it closer to the interior side yard. They've asked for relief down to 0.9 meters rather than the 1.5 meters required in zoning. As a result of circulation, there were no comments received that would indicate there's any issue with this. I've discussed it internally with the chief building official, and 3 feet is essentially the minimum that we can go down to, and that's reflected in the application here and is consistent with what the applicant needs. So as such, we are supportive of the application today. I am available to answer any questions. I would just highlight that Dwayne Bayer, the applicant, is also here to answer any questions you may have for him.
Are there any questions from the committee for Spencer? Not seeing any. Does the applicant wish to speak to their application? Are there any members of the public either here or online to speak to this? No? Okay. Then, if there's no other questions from the committee, I have moved by Mitchell, seconded by McDonald, that the Township of Zorra Committee of Adjustment approve application A17-22 submitted by Dwayne and Melissa Bayer for lands described as Plan M26 Lot 92 and municipally known as 249 Selden Street, Thamesford in the Township of Zorra as it relates to 1. Relief from Section 11.1, Table 11.2-R1 zone provisions to reduce the minimum required interior side yard width from 1.5 meters, 4.92 feet, to 0.9 meters, 3 feet, to facilitate the construction of an addition to an existing attached garage, subject to the following condition: that the relief granted by the committee regarding application A17-22 shall apply to a garage addition comprising approximately 30 square meters, 323 square feet, and at an approximate location as illustrated on Plate 3 of Report Number 2022-383, to the satisfaction of the Township of Zorra. Does anybody wish to speak to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So, Mr. Bayer, there's a waiting period on that, but if you just follow my cues, he will make sure that you're in compliance in getting your building permit before you proceed and everything, and you should be good to go then, okay? All right, thanks a lot. Moved by McDonald, seconded by Mitchell, that council move out of the Committee of Adjustment and pursuant to the Planning Act that the public meeting be adjourned at 9:04 a.m. and the regular meeting of council be called back to order. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So before the 9:30 delegation, if nobody has any preferences, we'll just go through these in order. Anybody got to get out of here for anything? No? Then Chief, you're up. 8.1A, Fire Department Report 2022-159 from the Fire Chief regarding monthly fire report for September.
Morning. A couple things to highlight on here. Last night we completed our second of 2 tool demonstrations looking at some new AutoX tools, some hydraulics. Pretty impressive to see the technology that's available and to move the department. We've got some tethered tools that are almost two decades old that have been really meticulously maintained, are in excellent condition, but to see the technology changes, and these tethered tools haven't been sold in 7 or 8 years now that it's advanced that far, to all battery operated. So the firefighters from all 3 stations have had the opportunity to demo them, try them, learn about them, and then we'll look to make decisions for capital planning in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years as we kind of phase some new equipment in. Personnel-wise, a couple of promotions I want to highlight. Firefighter Jeremy Wallace is now Captain Jeremy Wallace in the Thamesford station. Firefighter Brian Stotzer has been promoted to a training officer in the Uniondale station. And Captain Scott Matheson's been promoted to the district chief in the Uniondale station. So almost through kind of filling in those promotional pieces and wrapping up some of that across the department, which has been excellent to see some of these firefighters step up into these leadership roles. And then revenues, Zorra's received 2 grants. One's for $5,000, purchasing some training materials, and that's through Enbridge, so we'll look to have some smoke and CO alarms to be distributed through the community again. And then there's a certification training grant that's opened up, so I've put forth our needs as a department, and then we will hopefully learn more about what we'll have access to. And then the last piece I wanted to highlight was that our recruits just finished live fire, so normally this is completed in May. This year we postponed to September. We were delayed in our start earlier, but really excellent to see all of those recruits work through the Ingersoll burn cell. We changed the format a little bit this year, and they learned all facets of what it was like to be on a volunteer scene, not just show up. The hose is all there for you. They pulled the hose, they fought the fire, and then when it was all done, they cleaned up and they loaded high vol, and they changed cylinders, and they rehabbed, and they supported each other and worked through those pieces. So it was a different model this year, and I think they saw the full scope of a fire scene in that snapshot.
Any questions from council for the chief? Paul?
Comment and one question. First of all, the comment, I'd like to congratulate Scott Matheson on his promotion to District Chief of Uniondale. Obviously, that's a position that's near and dear to my heart. I've known Scott throughout his career as a firefighter, and he's been an excellent firefighter, and he will make an excellent chief. He has all the qualities of leadership. Most importantly, he has the respect of the people that he will be leading. And especially the fact that Scott is a partner in a very large and diversified farming operation, the fact that he has taken on this responsibility, I really appreciate that. So congratulations to Scott, and as well as to the other 2 individuals that the chief mentioned. My question, Chief, is the line in there about building and processes for checking and tracking AEDs within the community has been commenced, and Zorra is probably the leading community in the province for AEDs, largely through the Andrew Stoddard legacy project. But as with all equipment, it needs maintenance, and there's a potential there that there's a false sense of security that we have the AEDs, and when they go to use them, they're not operational. So if you could just fill us in on what the fire department's involvement in that program is going to be.
Yeah, you're exactly right that Zorra is a bit of a leader in this because of the work Kara has done with the Andrews Legacy. And that's where this came from when we looked at the Smile Cookie campaign, and Kara had kind of sent Zorra on a scavenger hunt of sorts to locate all these throughout the community, and we started going, holy smokes, there's a lot of these in the community, and it's wonderful, but who is looking after these? And it's not on the fire department, it's not necessarily on facilities, but what can we be doing to support and make sure that it's not a false sense of security? The fire department maintains the fire department access ones. Facilities, Matt and Jason and I have worked closely and looked at those. Fire supports with helping gather the supplies. If we see something near expiry, if we see batteries that need replacement, and working on those regular maintenance schedules. I'm sort of, or the fire department's the liaison to support with that piece. And then in the community, we've chatted to the firefighters about having an awareness of, if you're in Tim Hortons, open up that case, take a look. Is everything operational? And then let the business owner know. That ultimately lands on them to support having those in their facilities. But what can we be doing to just have an awareness as educated and trained individuals to support on that piece so that those are available? And then we've set up some tracking software internally to help with that process. As quick as it is to do an email out or a social media post about checking your smoke alarms, we can do the same of check those AEDs and just build that awareness and help get that message out that we need to be maintaining these pieces of equipment as well.
Thanks, Chief. And we have to talk about the different roles of the fire service. There's the response role, which gets all the glamour, but there's also the prevention and the education role. And this is just another initiative that you've taken on and recognized the need in the prevention area. So kudos to you and the rest of the staff for taking a look at this, a potential problem that we can head off.
Any other questions for the chief? Just two comments then. One, live fire training was awesome, again. And I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but there was also the part where they backed the truck up and they got a call, right? So they arrived on scene in the truck and then did the whole, so they had the full experience, right? I mean, short of being at the dinner table when they got the call, they had the whole experience, which was very impressive. Closer and closer to a total simulation for these brand new firefighters of what they're going to experience. So again, I would say, if you haven't been, find it from the chief when it is next year. Because again, I went this time and spent, I don't know how long I was there for, but a couple hours or something probably. It's kind of mesmerizing. The bigger thing though, I think, is how satisfying it is to see, you know, as some of the older firefighters who've served our community for frankly decades are retiring out, to see under your leadership some of the new younger firefighters stepping up into leadership positions and saying that they're willing to become the training officer, become captains, become district chiefs, is just so rewarding when we know that there are other rural fire services in Ontario who are struggling to recruit any firefighters at all. We get, you know, in the 2 nights, how many people did we have at our recruitment nights? Almost 24 people. And our young firefighters are stepping up, as you say, even in the midst of having, you know, large and growing agribusinesses stepping up into these positions. It's a testament, I think, to the culture in our fire department overall, that people feel there are roles for them to play and that they're comfortable stepping up to do that. And of course, we're all safer because of it. So thanks, and please pass that on, as Paul said, to all the people who have stepped up in all the halls in the last year, frankly. So anybody else for the? Thanks. So we have then moved by McDonald, seconded by Mitchell, that report 2022-159 from the fire chief be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And then 8.1B, report 2022-158 from the fire chief regarding fire dispatch services.
So as this report outlines, a little bit of a surprise to the rural fire chiefs that we would be not renewing our agreement with Woodstock Police. 2 of the 5 municipalities had actually already taken this agreement to their councils to renew for 5 years. We had an agreement on the table, and they have since notified us that we won't be continuing on. That puts us in a little bit of a position, although they are willing to continue providing services for up to a year in our current agreement, that was written in there. We do need to look quickly at moving our infrastructure and securing a dispatch service. I think the key thing to highlight is our maintenance provider has said relocating something this size in 12 months is something they haven't seen done successfully. Start to finish. So that's where I wanted to put forth that we look to sole source it and keep it within the county. If we look at the full RFP process and starting from scratch, I think that 12-month timeline is not going to be sufficient. And I think we have a really viable option, and I've outlined all the reasons as to why it's probably best to keep it as close to home as possible.
Questions for the chief on this report? Paul?
Yeah, Chief, I agree with if keeping dispatch close to home has many benefits, and I know of departments in southern Ontario that are dispatched out of Owen Sound and Sudbury, and I think that's a problem. You mentioned keeping it within Oxford County, sole sourcing it, and I'm aware of the Tillsonburg Fire Department has run a dispatch service for many years, which has been, as far as I know, very successful and has expanded to a number of departments. Is there another dispatch service within the county other than the Tillsonburg one that would be what we need for our continued service?
No, Tillsonburg is a designated dedicated fire dispatch, and they're dispatching almost 22 departments at this time. So they NFPA compliant, and as you've said, growing and thriving at what they're doing.
And I believe they are strictly fire. There's no cross with police or anything that could be a conflict.
Correct, strictly fire, and Woodstock Police would continue being the PSEP, so they would continue receiving 911 calls, but Tillsonburg would be the fire dispatch.
Thank you.
Anyone else on this report? Steve?
Just a question to clarify it in my mind, but so when Joe Public phones in for a fire call but dials 911, it's going to go to Woodstock, then get transferred to wherever? So there's no time lag or confusion. It's still 911, I need help, no matter what it is.
Yeah, so the way the 911 system works is there is one central agency who takes the 911 calls in the county. That will continue to be Woodstock Police for all of the county. When they answer and say police, fire, ambulance, they then triage how that goes from there, whether that goes OPP, central ambulance, or fire dispatch.
Anyone else? Yeah, I don't like diverging from our purchasing policy to go with the sole source, but if there was ever justification for it in terms of an emergency, this is it. I mean, this is not like a, if there's delays on a construction project, we can, leave the road closed sign up for a week, but we can't have a delay of even a minute in a case like this. So I think it's well justified to say, go and sole source this and ensure that we still have reliable dispatch happening, and that's not a thing that any of us have to worry about. So. Not ideal, certainly, the way this came about, just getting the notification with no heads up and no opportunity to discuss with Woodstock Police Board. Pretty disappointing, really, but I guess it is what it is. And as always, I think we just have to look forward, like this report is, and see is there a way for us to somehow come out of it maybe even better than we were, is the only way for us to deal with this as far as residents are concerned. Anybody else? Anything for the chief before I read the resolution? Or the motion, sorry. Moved by Mitchell, seconded by McDonald, that council receive report 2022-158 from the fire chief regarding fire dispatch services, and that council direct staff to sole source a new dispatch agreement within Oxford County. Anybody wish to speak to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, chief. Recreation. Matt, report 2022-162 from the Director of Recreation Facilities regarding monthly recreation report for September.
Nothing to highlight on the report.
Any questions for Matt on this report? Moved by McDonald, seconded by Mitchell, that report 2022-162 from the Director of Recreation Facilities be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And staff, report 2022-163 from the Recreation Facilities Program Coordinator regarding season end reports on the Zorra Summer Day Camp and Thamesford area swimming pool. Is there anything you want to highlight for council in that?
Specific, just a general appreciation for the staff that worked this summer. We had another great group of kids that helped us this summer and worked really hard with all the kids in town, so we're appreciative for their hard work this summer.
Questions for staff on this report? Paul?
I always appreciate these reports because they're written by the people that are in charge of the camp and of the pool, so we're getting lack of a better term, right from the horse's mouth of what happened, and recommendations are quite useful. Number of questions, Stephanie. In the registration numbers for Thamesford Littles versus Thamesford Bigs, there's quite a discrepancy. Now I realize there's a 5-year age range for the Littles and a 3-year age range. So is that the main reason that there's so many more in the Littles than the Bigs, or is there other factors involved?
That is a larger reason why the numbers are so discrepant, but also the age and the nature of the kids in the bigs don't always need the care that the littles do. They don't need the ongoing care. They have other interests that they can look for more specific camps or activities to enroll in as well. A lot of kids go to hockey camps, golf camps, and sometimes they're able to be home by themselves for short periods of time when they're 9, 10, or 11 years old. So they have a bit more flexibility in their care than the younger kids do. So we do find the younger kids do need that more care than the bigger ones do, which is why we get more of the little ones.
The week of August the 2nd to the 5th was a 4-day week, and the numbers were lower on that. Was there a reduced fee for 4 days instead of 5 days?
Yeah, we prorate the rate of the registration, so they only pay for the 4 days instead of the full 5 days. So they do get a reduced fee, but because it is a holiday Monday, a lot of people do take vacation that week, so it's possible that they just don't need care that week. And that is traditionally a lower attended week in general over the course of the camp thus far.
Oh, sorry. Can you clarify what the recommendation on the policy and cancellation is?
Yep.
7 days.
So this recommendation is what Rebecca, our camp coordinator, has recommended, just to kind of give us a framework from where to start on what we could potentially look at implementing when it comes to a cancellation policy, to have in writing. And her recommendation is that anything longer than 7 days out from a cancellation, or the week of camp that they're wishing to cancel for, would be a full refund. Anything within a week leading up to the start of their time at camp would require a $50 administration fee that we would withhold. The remainder of the registration fee would be returned back to them. So I'm not sure if it maybe was just written a bit not clear on here, but that I think is the intent, is that we would withhold that $50 fee just as a sort of a penalty for taking up a spot that we could have otherwise filled by them canceling so late in the game. And again, these are just a recommendation for which we still would work and flesh out an actual cancellation policy.
So we don't have a cancellation policy up till now?
Nothing official, no.
Okay, but it's a
Yeah.
good idea to have one.
Yep, definitely is.
There's a mention in there about behavioral incidents, and I wonder have we seen a trend line over those 6 years of increased or worse behavioral problems, or has it been worse in the last 2 or 3 years with maybe influence of COVID?
I would say, in general, no. We have not seen an increase in poor behavior of children at camp. I think kids are just kids, and they act up, and they have big feelings, and it's hard sometimes for kids to go to these things. We have had kids throughout the years that have had exceptionalities that we need to address specifically with the families, and we have been able to work through them. We've had some recent incidences where the exceptionalities of some kids have caused us to sort of reevaluate how we manage these problems with the parents, with the families, and what the expectations are if we no longer should have that kid at camp anymore. And there are reasons why we would ask a child not to come to camp. Primarily it goes back to staff safety and how they're interacting with that child and how that child's interacting with them. So there were some instances this past year specifically that highlighted the need for that policy. But I would say in general, we have not seen an increase of behavior in kids, and definitely not because of COVID specifically.
Last question on camp was, it's mentioned about other options in Embro, because where it's held at the community center is a distance from the downtown. Are there any other options in Embro that are practical?
Not that we have found as of yet. Our only township facility other than this community center is the town hall, which is already being used by Dramarama for the month of July. Otherwise, it would be looking to rent space from church basements or other general gathering areas in town. With the opening of the splash pad in Embro at the end of the summer, our camps did walk from the community center up to the splash pad once or twice, and it did not seem to be that terrible for them. They seemed to be able to get there, and they planned a bit of an afternoon of it. They brought their lunches, they had a play, they played in the splash pad. So I think it's reasonable to expect that we could incorporate that into their weekly activities. They probably wouldn't get there as often as, say, our Thamesford kids would get to the pool. It is a little bit further.
Okay, thank you. I do have one pool question, but if anybody else has got a... Okay. So my pool question was, it looks like the lessons and the aquafit and the lanes, those numbers have trended well with previous years' operations, but the recreational swimming is much down from what the peak was, and I agree with the point in the report that weather definitely has an impact on this. But I got curious, and I Google mapped Thamesford, and there's a lot of private pools in Thamesford. So is there any chance that recreational swimming is not as much needed as it was previously, because there's been a lot of pools put in the last 2 or 3 years?
It's definitely a possibility. Kids and families don't have to drag everything to the public pool to swim if they wish to look for some place to cool off. We have found that the kids also just use the pool, though, for a social gathering. It's sort of a place to meet up and find their friends and meet their friends throughout the summer. So that, I think, is more the focus of how we promote the use of our public pool during these public swims, because I would agree that home pools do have an effect on what we see at our pool for sure.
So in the future, it may, as you say, we may promote recreational swimming more, or we may shift the focus a little bit to more organized lessons and that sort of thing, is to maximize the use of the pools.
It's possible, yeah. We don't find that we're at a point with our lessons that we have maxed out, that there's always an option potentially for someone to find a lesson at some point in the summer, because we do offer weekends and evenings as well as our daytime lessons. So should those things all come to a point where we can no longer fit anybody else, then we would probably reevaluate the public swimming times that we offer. At this point, I think, just with the community growing, I think there's potential for us to get more bodies in our pool during public swim, and it's just a continuance of advertising and making sure people are aware that the pool actually exists, because some people don't understand or even know that it's a feature that we have in our town.
Yeah, there will be, as you just mentioned, there's going to be a lot of new people moving into Thamesford in the next couple of years, so how to utilize the pool will be an interesting, how those numbers pan out. So
Exactly.
Thanks for all the answers, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? More people are going to know about the pool in Ingersoll because one of the candidates brought it up in the all-candidates meeting last week. So, in a public forum about how great the Thamesford pool was. So, maybe expect some people traveling down 19 to the pool. So, anyway, if there's nothing else for Steph on that report, moved by Forbes, seconded by Grigg, that report 2022-163 from the Recreation Facilities Program Coordinator to be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Steph. Excellently written reports.
I didn't write them, but you're welcome.
But you can pass it on to those.
I will, I do, yes, thank you.
And we can probably sneak in building and drainage in a minute. Right, Mike? Report. You're up to the challenge?
Yeah.
Report,
Yeah.
Report 2022-160 from the Chief Building Official, Drainage Superintendent regarding monthly building report for September. Mike, is there anything you want to highlight in that report?
Nothing at all.
Any questions from council on that report? Not seeing any. Question.
Yes.
I'm curious if this is something that, how easy it would be. I know we have the data. I'm not sure how easy it would be for staff to put it together. New builds each year, new residential builds, right, each year, and demolitions each year, like over the last 10 years. I know it's out there because we track it. We get it in the monthly report.
Yep.
Would that be something that we could pull together somehow?
Sure.
I'm trying to get an idea of, in my head, of like, so, you know, we get the monthly report, this is how many new ones start and we take down, but cumulatively, like over a long period of time, like how many net new actual houses are actually being completed in this township over a period of time?
Yeah, we don't lose a lot of houses really, because
No, but
for one
still.
that comes down, one that goes up, generally
Yeah,
speaking.
generally, right?
Yeah.
So it is definitely the more the new houses, that a number that I'm interested in, but in fairness, some
Yeah.
get taken down. I'm just curious, because, you know, housing is such a big issue nowadays. Everybody's talking about it. And we know that, you know, the growth projections from the province are that, and certainly the census data says that Zorra Township is growing faster than the provincial average. So I'm just curious, you know, in terms of planning going forward, how many houses have we been, as a municipality, as a community, have we been able to actually build? You know, so that we have an idea going forward. Is that something that we could?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody else for Mike? Moved by Grigg, seconded by Forbes, that report 2022-160 from the Chief Building Official Drainage Superintendent received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And delegation time. You guys want to, oh, you're at the table already? You got the mic, and is it working? So we have a delegation from the Thamesford Lions Club, and Glenn Ross and Don Weir are here. I'm not sure, it's up to you guys who wants to speak. I would suggest that you assume council's done its homework and read what you've submitted, and hit the high points so you have some time for some questions from them, and I'll turn it over to you guys, to your delegation.
Okay, Glenn Ross, Thamesford Lions Club, and my sidekick, Don Weir. The Lions Club has approved a paving project in South Lions Park to pave the trail from Selden to the east end of the pavilion. We have Delco Paving doing the job, and hopefully in the next few days or weeks. So we have approved the full funding of the project, including HST. But the quote from Delco is for $9,350 plus HST. And our request at this time is, could we process the invoice, once the job is completed, through the municipality with the interest in saving the Lions Club the cost of the HST, keeping in mind this is a fixed project. I don't know whether you would call it an asset or not, but a fixed structure in South Lions Park, which is owned and operated by the township, and of course the township would assume responsibility for further maintenance and whatever going forward on that section of paved trail, which we see as an improvement to the park for accessibility, aesthetics, and what have you. So that's our request. Just wondering if there's an opportunity that we could work together on that and process that invoice through the municipality with the intent to save the Lions Club the cost of I think it's $1,215.50 of HST. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions from council for the delegation? Katie?
So this is not entirely different than, say, the pavilion project that the Lions Club undertook 2 or 3 years ago, correct?
Yes.
So when we're looking at what we want to do for improvements, we're sort of looking through a bit of a different lens where community groups are able to raise some funds if they're wanting to make these improvements that go above and beyond what we're planning as a municipality. My question is, so up until this point, you've been working direct with our recreation staff. So the plans for how this is going to be, the construction's going to go in, has all been in communication with Director of Recreation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for the delegation?
Marcus?
Paul?
Not a question for a delegation, a question for staff? Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know if Matt or Diane, what's the legalities of we're putting this through the books like this? This is, like, I agree, it's certainly would be a benefit to help that we can get the HST back and the Lions Club can't, but are we setting some kind of a precedence that could get us in trouble with the tax department by doing it this way?
No, there's no issues with running it through the books for the township. Actually, I encourage it because then we capture it as a capital asset and report it properly and put it through our life cycle strategy also. So this is actually something that I would like to recommend going forward.
That's good to know. It's not only a good precedence, but something that we should pursue further. And my compliments to the Lions Club for coming forward and funding this project. So, seems like a good thing to do.
Any other questions for the delegation or staff before I read the motion? Moved by Grigg, seconded by McDonald, that council endorse the Don Knox Trail paving project from the Thamesford Lions Club to be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Recreation and Facilities as outlined in the delegation from Glen Ross, and that the project be funded by the Township of Zorra and that payment to the Township be provided by the Lions Club for the full balance of $9,350, and that the project be captured as a capital asset for the Township for asset management purposes. Katie is the mover. Do you want to speak to this?
So I really see this, the what's being requested here is really no different than what we did with the pavilion project. So I think this project was a little bit different in that there was an initial request from the Lions Club to do a more significant paving project. There were some challenges with that project. Once we got into site prep, the project was pulled back and then sort of reemerged. So I think there was a bit of a different process that led to us getting here, but this is absolutely, as Diane said, a good way of moving forward with these types of projects. I have the pleasure of, and I mean, we all have in one way or another, had the pleasure of supporting the variety of Lions initiatives that they, events and fundraisers that they put on to generate the revenue to make these types of improvement projects. And when I think about that $1,215.50 of HST, that is a nice volume of money that they're going to turn around and be able to put right back into the community. And it reflects probably a significant amount of volunteer hours put forward by the members of our community that serve on the Lions Club. So yeah, I'm happy to support this motion. I had some good discussion with Diane and Karen ahead of time to make sure that that what it is that we're authorizing is what's best for both sides of this, and of course that we're not doing anything that that we shouldn't be doing. So thank you both for your time in supporting me on that.
Steve, as the seconder, did you want to speak to it?
Well, just briefly, to me, this was a very simple decision for me, and it's a great initiative from the Lions' part and everything else to benefit to everyone. The only question I had was already put to Diane from Councillor Paul, and that's the legality of it. If it's all good and go and you actually prefer it that way, then I fully support it.
Anyone else? Just a question for you, Matt. Is this consistent with your, recreation department's best practices for accessibility and also for trails in general going forward in the township?
Yes, it would be definitely an improvement for accessibility to that pavilion. There is already one access point with just paved heading in off of the west side of the pavilion, but adding the second one on the east side and closer to the playground also is a fantastic improvement. And as far as the trails, ideally we would, if the funds were available, we would pave all our trails and make them fully asphalt as far as the ones inside, like the non-wilderness trails or non-nature trails. But so this is a great project and captures part of the project that the Lions wished to undertake about a year and a half ago.
Thanks. Anything else? I'll read it again and call the question. Moved by Grigg, seconded by McDonald, that council endorse the Don Knox Trail paving project from the Thamesford Lions Club to be completed to the satisfaction of the Director of Recreation and Facilities as outlined in the delegation from Glen Ross, and that the project be funded by the Township of Zorra, and that payment to the Township be provided by the Lions Club for the full balance of $9,350, and that the project be captured as a capital asset for the Township for asset management purposes. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And thanks to the Lions for bringing this project forward. I know it had a little bit of a false start before, but you kept at it, and thank you very much for that, and very happy that the Township can play a role and save $1,215 that you guys can then do whatever the Lions want to do with that for the community. So look forward to more of these collaborations in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think 9:40, we don't have a super long agenda. If everybody's good, we'll take a coffee and muffin break now and come back at what, 5:02? Good? We're adjourned. We'll have this meeting over in 5 minutes. All right, compose yourselves. All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And we are up to 8.4A, Public Works Department Report 2022-161 from the Director of Public Works regarding monthly Public Works report for September. Steve, is there anything you want to highlight in that report?
No, nothing to highlight.
Questions from council?
Couple of questions, Steve, about the issues with Road 92 between line 29 and 31 being closed. It's been 2 months since the paving was done. I know it's a shouldering issue, but I've had some concerns why that road has still got the road closed signs up. And can you touch on the legalities of why we're doing what we're doing there?
Yeah, so there's about a 4-inch shoulder drop off from the edge of the new pavement to the existing old shoulder of the road. Because of that and the risk involved in that, we don't want to open the road at this time until that shoulder gets brought up to grade. It's more of an issue at night, especially when there's no lines painted on through that section. It is quite dark at night as there's bush on both sides for the majority of it. And our fear is, and the additional lot of large farm equipment too, where people have to give extra room for. So with those combinations of issues, we feel that it's safer for everybody and the traveling public to just keep it closed until the shouldering gets done. I've been in contact with the contractor weekly. We're told it's coming, but to date we haven't seen it. So last I talked to the contractor, we're next on the list. So hopefully we see it very, very soon. And then line painting will follow that.
And the ditches along that stretch are deep, so if somebody does go off the edge, there's the potential to be
exactly
a rollover and a serious.
Never ideal to keep the road closed, especially when it's got brand new pavement on it. It feels like it should be open, but everything's got to be finished up before we can actually open the road for the traveling public, full traffic through.
And as we discussed we have issues with people going around road closed signs when there's accidents and trees downs and fires and stuff. And this kind of sends the message that to disregard a road closed sign because it's
it does,
It
unfortunately.
is,
yes.
That's just the way it is.
It does set a bad precedence. It's, road closed is road closed. We get that on a regular basis anyway, but, this doesn't help the situation. And believe me, and Public Works would love to see this road open and complete. But unfortunately, it just hasn't happened. I understand that when the asphalt went down, it was very, very hot, and they like to let it cure and get hard before they do any extra work on it so they don't do any damage to the new pavement. But usually that's 2 weeks max, even in hot weather conditions. So this is very excessive. We've never had this issue in the past where there's been such a delay between the completion of pavement operations and then shouldering. So future contracts, we're going to have to address this. There's a date that it has to be done by, and there'll be a penalty every day after that. So that's, unfortunately, we have to look at these clauses in tendering, but situations like this, we will have to.
I noticed in some of the other tracking sheets that township staff is doing shouldering. Is it a possibility of doing shouldering, considering what's happened on this stretch?
For placing gravel shouldering, it involves another piece of machinery, which we don't have. Renting a piece of machinery is possible, but those shouldering machines are usually hard to come by in the summer months, as a lot of areas people are using them. If it's something we'd planned on doing, we'd have definitely could have had that, booked for a certain date that we could use that machine. It would take about 3 or 4 days to do it ourselves, especially being our gravel source is very close. It wouldn't take too long. It's just sourcing the equipment to do it at the time. So in the past and other paving contracts, we've always had the shouldering as part of the contract and never had any issues to date, but this year it's caught us, so we're working through it.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Steve, because it has been frustration for some people up that way. So
Yes, absolutely. I understand that.
Anybody else on this report? Ron?
I guess it really isn't on the report. I'll wait till you're finished with the report.
Anybody else on the report? Moved by Forbes, seconded by Grigg, that report 2022-161 from the Director of Public Works be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any other questions for Steve that are not on the report? Ron?
And it's not a question. Got a call from a resident of Ward 1 last week, and after our disaster on Road 62 back in the spring, he told me that this particular resident said that for 12 years he's called me with nothing but complaints, and he thought it was time that maybe he congratulated the roads department on the summer's job they did on Road 62, because it was good all summer, and he was really pleased with the grass cutting along the edges of the road in that area this summer.
That's good. Thank you for passing that on, and I'll pass that on to the crew. Thank you.
Sorry, is there anything you want to highlight in that report?
Just a quick updates on the solar. They've installed the transformer inside the building in the stock room. They've got the inverters all set there ready to be installed. They're moving along with starting to install the panels on the roof, so they're moving along really quickly and making good progress on that end of it. Water treatment system we're hoping to see this week. It hasn't arrived yet, so we're still waiting for that. The asphalt company has moved in. They have started prepping the yard, and they're hoping to be paving it next week. So we'll hope to see that completed soon. And that's all I have.
Questions for Steve on this report? I have one then, I guess. Question / comment on the geothermal well drilling. I'm really happy to see this strategy, here laid out, because I would sort of assume that failing all else, we would get the number of drilled wells that we paid for. But if we can come to an agreement with them where that works for us and works for them, that's good. But I think the default position should always be, the original contract was for this many drilled wells, and that's what we're paying for. And as long as that's what we're paying for, that's what we should get, unless we, something more amicable can be worked out. So I think this is a good strategy that, protects the functionality of the building and the tax dollars going towards it. So I think that's good.
Yeah, it's still ongoing, this issue, but we're working through it. Things take time. It's been back and forth on this for quite a while, and I think we're all getting frustrated with it, but I'm confident we'll come to some agreement on this. The proper process is that we get refunded the full amount, and if there's any additional needed, then it should go through the proper channels as a change order. I think that's the proper process we've been using throughout this whole project, and that would, why would that change going forward? So that was my biggest concern on it at this point, that because we put that money out, that extra money especially, they're withholding that just on presumptions that it's going to cost them more to finish the less amount of holes, and that's not the proper way of going through the process.
Agreed. Anything else for Steve on this report? Moved by Grigg, seconded by Forbes, that report 2022-164 from the Director of Public Works be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Steve. Nothing from finance. Diane's still keeping her powder dry until budget time. 8.6 Corporate Services Department report 2022-126 from the Legislative Coordinator Deputy Clerk regarding electronic monitoring policy. Alicia, is there anything you want to highlight for council in that report?
No, this policy is just for council's information. It is a required policy under the Working for Workers Act 2022. It has been circulated to staff for comment, and we haven't received anything.
Any questions from council on this policy? Moved by Forbes, seconded by Grigg, that report 2022-126 from the Legislative Coordinator Deputy Clerk be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thanks, Alicia. And 9A, correspondence requiring direction. There's only one item. Correspondence from the Memorial Committee regarding Memorial Stone in Lakeside, and you've all read that, and nobody's here to present on it. So I guess before I read the motion, are there any questions from council to staff just before I read the motion? I'll read the motion then. Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Grigg. Whereas the Township of Zorra has received funds from Multisport Canada in recognition of the inconvenience to the residents of Lakeside and area caused by the Lakeside Triathlon, and whereas this arrangement was formalized by Resolution 1608-19, which was passed by Council on August 7th, 2019, stipulating that the Township of Zorra had no objection to the Lakeside Triathlon on condition that Multisport Canada donate $1,000 to the Township, and whereas these funds have been segregated for the purpose of supporting a community project in Lakeside and area, therefore be it resolved that the Township of Zorra transfer $1,500 to the Christchurch Cemetery Lakeside, acting on behalf of the Lakeside Memorial Committee from the Triathlon funds to be used for the community project described in the letter from the Memorial Committee. Paul, as the mover, do you want to speak to that?
I think the letter from Mr. Renew is self-explanatory, but I would like to bring council's attention to the photograph that's included in the request. And at front center of the photo is the memorial plaque that is the focus of this project. I think it's modest, but certainly fitting for this location. The bench that was mentioned in the letter that's been donated is next to it. In the rear is the Anglican Church, which was built in 1863 on land and with lumber that was donated by James Ingersoll, who is the half-brother of Laura Secord. And so it's some historical significance there. It no longer has regular weekly services, but they do hold at least 6 regular services a year, and they have the occasional wedding and funeral. Surrounding the church is the cemetery, which is maintained by the Lakeside Cemetery Board, and I can attest it's in immaculate condition and at no cost to the township. To the left, you can see just the corner of a railing there. That is attached to the parish hall, which was originally the Lakeside CPR station. It was moved to this location in 1957, and over the years it's been used as a Sunday school and for winter services for the church. And it's currently used by the Lakeside Women's Institute. It's available to other groups for meetings. And the township used it in 2019 when we had a community meeting when we were working on the original Road 92 improvement projects. And behind the parish hall is something really interesting. You see a sidewalk going in behind the parish hall, and that turns into a circular stamped concrete walkway. And on each side and in the middle of the circle of the walkway are flower beds, and in the middle of the circle is a small monument. There's also a park bench back there. And what this is one of the first scattering gardens in the area. And what a scattering garden is, a place where you can scatter the ashes of your loved ones. And the bench is there. People can come back and meditate, and same as you would go visit a grave site. There will be a plaque placed on the back of the building where the names of the people that are scattered there will be written down. It's really the ultimate in recycling, because your ashes can be used to grow the flowers in the flower bed, and there actually was a scattering ceremony there last Sunday. So the site has great historical, going back 160 years, historical value. But the committee that's requesting these funds are also looking forward to making this site a focal area for the community of Lakeside. They, as I say, they maintain this facility without any financial support or staff support from the township. And as far as the funds, as it says in the motion, Multisport Canada has donated so far $1,500 into this fund. And I believe they've been invoiced for another $1,000, as was indicated in the motion we passed for this year's event. And the money was earmarked that it would go back into the local community. There are no other service clubs other than the Masons in Lakeside that would, I anticipate, come forward with a project like this. So I think it's well worth supporting a project that's not on township property, but certainly carries out an important historical and into the future an important role in one of our smaller communities. So that's why I brought the motion forward in support of the request from the group.
Katie is the secondary. Do you want to speak to it? No? Anybody else? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And I'm assuming, Paul, you will get back to them. I mean,
Will
staff
do.
will formally and
Yep.
everything, but yeah, thank you. And 10, boards and committees, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board update from Board Member Mitchell. Paul, over to you.
Latest meeting was September 27th, the Board of the Upper Thames. First item was the Minister of Natural Resources sent us a letter saying that they are taking over authority for for conservation authorities away from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Apparently this is a return to what it was a number of years ago. To me, it seems kind of strange that the ministry that has conservation in it will no longer be in charge of conservation areas, but that's the way government works. We looked at the 2023 draft budget. The plan is to maintain level of services, incorporating an inflation increase of 5%. The final $172,500 of the environmental targets, which were adopted when Marcos was on the board, have been further deferred to 2024. I believe this is the fourth time we've done that. The first time was under pressure from the ministry. The last two times it was under pressure from COVID issues. But those are the parameters that the staff will be going forward on working on the budget. There is a proposed boundary adjustment where Upper Thames is going to take over a small part of Strathroy-Caradoc Township from the Lower Thames to the Upper Thames, which is more in line of the geographic location. The one impact will that the Strathroy-Caradoc will now have in the future will have a representative on the board. We anticipate, given the small amount of area, that would be a shared membership. We got a quarterly report on the program and services update. We've talked about this many times, just working with where staff are with working with municipalities developing the process. It's on a bit of a hold right now, considering that many of the municipalities are in lame duck situation, and that they're not in a position to make any decisions. But once the new councils are in, then they'll be coming forward to the municipalities with changes, memorandums of understandings for the Section 28 report. Nothing exciting there. But there has been an organization modernization in the Upper Thames. They've gone from 7 departments to 5 departments for a number of reasons. And at the top of the list was that there have been 12 senior people retire in the last couple of years. So there's a huge turnover in staff at the Upper Thames. So new people are coming in, partly because the changes in the delivery programs mandated by the changes in the Conservation Act, but also they want to become more efficient in the way that they provide services and respond to the different needs of the municipalities and people. So that was it. It's a relatively short meeting.
Any questions for Steve or for Paul on that? Then moved by Grigg, seconded by Forbes, that item 10A be received and filed for information purposes only. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 11. So I have a motion here to receive and file A and B. Does anybody have any questions on either of those or want to pull either of those out separately? Moved by Forbes, seconded by Grigg, that items 11A and B be received and filed for information purposes only. I would just comment briefly on the letter from Minister Clark. I think kind of frustrating to me, to be honest, because I think this is aimed at like larger municipalities and or municipalities that just do not process their planning applications the way we do. Like I read through this thing and this is how we do it already, like, and have done for ever, right, is quite an expeditious planning process. I think it's something that should have been highlighted, I should say, what not was, but should have been highlighted during the regional government review, that I know that those two gentlemen, it took them a while to realize it, but by the end they realized that planning was done in a very different way in Oxford County, but maybe the message hasn't got through to the minister. Anyway, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And no unfinished business, no notices of motion. So bylaws, items of community interest in the calendar, and then confirmatory and adjournment. So, moved by Grigg, seconded by Forbes, that bylaw 65-22 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And calendar. So, where are we at today? What I've got in the calendar, of course, Thanksgiving on Monday. County Council next Wednesday. There is a Thamesford All Candidates meeting on Thursday evening. There's a ZMCC pickleball tournament on Saturday the 15th. Is that correct, Katie? In the TDRC. And Chalmers Church is having an old-fashioned bazaar on the same day. And Township staff are doing a voter clinic in Embro on the same day. That's in the Embro Rec Center? Yeah. And then back here on the 19th, evening council meeting. That's what I've got in my calendar. Did I miss anything? Oh, yes. So, yes, so good point, because I know I got mine in the mail. So voting starts on what day does it actually open? The 13th. So next Thursday. Yeah. So next Thursday. And if people have not got their voting card in the mail by now, they should be contacting staff by now, right? Everybody, because I've had mine for a week-ish. So, okay. So if everybody could just get that word out to anybody, if you haven't got it, contact staff right away, because you can vote a week from tomorrow. Okay? Anything else on the calendar? Paul?
On September 24th, when you were at the live fire training, I was bringing greetings from the board and the township to the outdoor event at Wildwood. Excellent day, a lot of interesting displays. There was some tours, and a lot of young families with young kids there learning about the outdoors and conservation areas. So this is one of 10 events that I've mentioned before that are going through the fall. I would recommend anybody to go see them. On the Upper Thames website is when they are and where they are. So that was a past event that was well worth doing, with incorporated with future events. The only other thing is HACA meeting is moved to Tuesday of next week because of Thanksgiving. The in-person meeting at the Harrington Hall for HACA next Tuesday, the 11th.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything on the calendar? Any other items of community interest? Okay. So I've got confirmatory and adjournment then, and then we're done. So moved by Forbes, seconded by Grigg, that bylaw 65-22 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held October 5th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time this October 5th, 2022, and further that the mayor and clerk are hereby authorized to sign the same and affix the corporate seal thereto. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And moved by Grigg, seconded by Forbes, that this session of council be now adjourned and herewith closed at 10:20 a.m. And the next meeting of council be called for October 19th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers of the Township Municipal Office. All those in favor?